Welcome to Seeker, a world that celebrates curiosity, science, and exploration. In this special expedition to Everest in VR, we invite you to journey across the mountain where you'll discover interactive audio and visual guides that explore the environment, history, and the physical challenges that climbers face on Mount Everest. The gear required to climb to the top of the world is not insignificant. Climbers will need a 55-liter backpack, ice axe, steel 12-point crampons, harness, belay device and ascender for moving along fixed ropes, carabiners and trekking poles. For apparel, climbers need high-altitude double boots, camp shoes, wool socks, top and bottom base layers, mid layers, soft shell layers, and waterproof hard shell layers. Either a one-piece expedition-grade downsuit or a pants and jacket combo made for 8,000-meter peaks is mandatory. Liner gloves, soft shell gloves, insulated gloves, and expedition mittens are critical to keep hands warm. One will also need a helmet, ball cap, neoprene face mask, glacier goggles, ski goggles, headlamp, sleeping pad, and sleeping bag rated to -40 degrees. Then there are the miscellaneous personal items like food, a water bottle, mug, first aid kit, sunscreen, camera, and urination bottle for when you can't leave your tent. Bottled oxygen weighs about 2.5 kilos each. But climbers don't carry an entire supply at once, as high camps are established and stocked before a summit push is initiated. All that said, climbers can expect their packs to weigh anywhere between 9 and 14 kilos. Although it's the highest point on Earth, climate change is indeed melting Everest. From the Alps to the Andes to the Himalayas, ice at high elevations has been disappearing rapidly and at a rate that is only increasing. Glaciers are early indicators of climate change. The world's highest glacier, the Khumbu Glacier, is not immune. It has dropped in height by as much as 70 meters over the past 32 years. The icefall naturally moves downhill at a rate of 1 meter per day, but that could accelerate as temperatures continue to rise. An increase in temperature where ice is frozen to the bedrock weakens that hold, making it unstable and more likely to detach from the bedrock. As a result, we could see a higher frequency of rockfall and ice avalanches, like the one that killed 16 Sherpas in 2014. Meltwater is also a concern. Water naturally pools on the surface of glaciers during warmer months, but then drains and refreezes as the seasons change. Some ponds are no longer disappearing and are instead forming larger lakes. These lakes create a positive feedback loop, attracting more heat as they grow and accelerating the melting of the glacier itself. Glacial outbreak floods are not of immediate concern, but they've happened in the region before and would have devastating consequences in the valley below if a lake grew large enough to burst. Spring is the primary climbing season on Everest. Each year at the end of March, hundreds of climbers and support staff erect a colorful tent city at Mount Everest's 5,300-meter base camp, their home for the next 2 months. While conditions can change quickly, spring weather on the mountain offers a reliable break from the extremes that plague the peak during the rest of the year. Due to the mountain's near protrusion into the stratosphere, it takes a beating from hurricane-force winds for most of the year. In the spring, however, the jet stream moves north and the weather calms. The strong winds die down and temperatures rise. By mid-June, monsoon season is underway in Nepal, making conditions on the mountain inhospitable to climbing. Despite higher success rates in the spring, some alpinists do attempt the peak in the fall and winter off-season. In the autumn months, the days are shorter and colder, and the weather is more erratic, making attempts both more difficult and more dangerous. The fall season on Everest comes at the tail end of the monsoon season, when the mountain has the highest snow levels, thereby increasing the risk of avalanches. To date, only a handful of people have summited Everest during the autumn. The human body is not meant to sustain the altitudes of Mount Everest. The peak summit lies near the inhospitable cruising altitude of most jetliners. If someone were dropped at the summit from sea level, they'd lose consciousness within minutes. Beyond the physical challenges and dangers of climbing Everest, the human body is also susceptible to many debilitating illnesses. Acute mountain sickness, hypoxia, frostbite, retinal hemorrhaging, high-altitude pulmonary edema, high-altitude cerebral edema, and more commonly, headaches, diarrhea, blisters, sunburns, and upper respiratory infections. While mountain sickness can be mitigated by proper acclimatization, roughly 95% of climbers do require the aid of supplemental oxygen, specifically once the death zone has been reached at 8,000 meters. With high-altitude pulmonary edema and high-altitude cerebral edema, the body creates pressure on the brain and fluid in the lungs, causing fatigue and disorientation. Dexamethasone, or Dex, is a steroid that can be used to relieve the symptoms of cerebral edema. But the best treatment for both illnesses is to descend quickly to lower elevations. Most climbers lose 4 to 9 kilos during an expedition and burn roughly 10,000 calories daily, although fueling properly can be a challenge. Food becomes less appealing and digestion slows, making it more difficult for the body to absorb nutrition. Plain food and sugars, like brothy soups, rice, and trail mix, are favored over protein, which is harder to digest. Good sleep also becomes increasingly difficult at high altitudes, adding further complications with every additional meter gained. Based on fossil findings and rock formations, scientists have found that the Himalayan mountain range was formed as a result of continental drift, and the Indian plate collided with the Asian plate, closing the intervening Tethys Ocean roughly 50 million years ago. Today, the Indian plate continues to shift northward into Asia at a rate of 5 to 6 millimeters per year. The Mount Everest massif consists of various rock layers. The summit pyramid is comprised of grey, unmetamorphosed limestone, which was deposited on the floor of the Tethys Ocean during the Ordovician period 470 million years ago, long before the tectonic plates collided. The yellow band, a beige layer beneath the summit, is made up of metamorphic marble dating back to the Cambrian period, 510 million years ago. Continuing further down is the Everest series, containing layers of black metamorphic gneisses and minerals. This sits atop the greater Himalayan sequence, igneous and metamorphic rocks, including gneisses, migmatites and granite, which forms most of the rock along the greater Himalayas. Topographically, the mountain is a three-sided pyramid covered in glaciers, where three barren faces are separated by three ridges: the southeast ridge, the northeast ridge, and the west ridge. Everest rises 8,848 meters and is surrounded by towering peaks, notably Lhotse at 8,516 meters and Nuptse at 7,861 meters.
Two or 3 minutes, the goggles just freeze, and then you have to try and clean the inside of them, and that's then where people will go, like they'll try
it will be more like trying to clean with this.
Yeah.
Wiecie trzymało.
Tak?
The death zone is where the air no longer contains enough oxygen to support human life. At 8,000 meters, the body begins to deteriorate, and the risk of dying at the hand of high-altitude pulmonary edema or high-altitude cerebral edema increases exponentially. Here, humans take in only about 1/3 of the oxygen that's available at sea level. If the body is in a constant state of hypoxia, as it is in the death zone, it doesn't have the ability to recover. With a decreased amount of oxygen available, human tissue cannot repair. Red blood cells cannot deoxygenate, and the body cannot regenerate. Thus the importance of acclimatization rotations, returning to lower elevations so the body can recover, rest, and produce more red blood cells. The majority of climbers who lose their lives on Mount Everest do so in the death zone. Once climbers reach 8,000 meters, they'll be given an oxygen canister and mask, typically stored at Camp 3 by support teams, and proceed higher with the aid of supplemental oxygen. Using oxygen not only makes it easier to breathe, stay alert, and be mobile, but it also helps climbers keep warm. Before European alpinists Reinhold Messner and Peter Habeler successfully summited the mountain without oxygen in 1978, it was not only believed to be physically impossible to do so, but that death would be almost certain. Of the more than 4,400 people who have summited the peak, only 165 have summited Everest without using oxygen, 7 of them women.